All right, I hope we are live right now. So first of all, if you guys are wondering, this stream is just going to be with me. I have to extend a massive, massive thank you to Joe, aka 3D Maker Noob, who was gracious enough to throw me into his Prusa Mark III, I believe it is, giveaway this morning, and the response in terms of the subscriber count numbers, which I know are probably likely to change post giveaway, but you know, for the moment, they've definitely been climbing over 1K, which is just like mind blowing this morning. Just because I wake up this morning, I'm like, oh, cool, Joe released a video. Oh wait, I'm in the video. Oh man! And then literally, I jump on Social Blade, and it's already like went from like about almost 800 that morning to like close to 900 in like about an hour or two, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's insane. It was crazy. So bear with me, guys. It's just gonna be me on the stream tonight. Jimmy is over at work, probably hating himself right now for working right around Christmas. Feel bad for the guy, but he said if he can, he'll try and jump on the chat and all that stuff. I am live, Pierre, and thanks, dude. It's been a long time coming, and I definitely have to thank everybody in the past who's shouted me out and, you know, things like that with the videos. It's definitely been a much appreciated, especially considering that when I say my channel's been more low key, I get some people jump on the bandwagon of popular stuff, and I'm totally cool with that. It's just personally, that's not my style. So I kind of feel like it's here today, gone tomorrow. So I've kind of just been like, well, what's some generic projects I can work on? And also because I'm a hodgepodge of projects, it makes it, sometimes I feel a little bit of a blessing, a little bit of a curse, but you know, that whole thing. Yeah, Turkin, me and Jimmy decided that I'm not going to be going for the Joe look, and I'm not going for the Daniel Nuray look. A little bit off, but we'll see about that one. I should probably, like, you know, put it into a bag and like ship it off to Joe and be like, ha, proof, you know, as a joke or something. But we'll see about that part. But the cool part is sorry, my phone's going off. Need to put on mute. The cool thing is, in 6 days and a couple of hours, I'm going to be on the road down to Jimmy's house so I can pile into his car so we can go barreling on out to Vegas to go see Jeff over at the Print 3D channel for his end of the year project, the Print 3D 365 project, which is just absolutely nuts that the whole thing even happened. And then we got invited out, and it's going to happen, which I am just absolutely stoked about. You know, it's going to be fun. You know, I've actually thought about that. Turka made a good point. He goes, nah, just pay for one of those fake bald caps and tuck the hair in and take some pics and send to him. I've actually thought about that, and I might actually order one up just as a joke, even though everybody's going to be like, yeah, obviously it's fake. Just for the sake of messing with everybody, I have thought about doing that. So we'll see. That would be actually pretty funny to do, but we'll see. I've got some other silly ideas in mind, but I'm not going to spoil the surprise on those by saying them just yet. So we'll leave it at that. But yeah, that's definitely going to be an exciting thing. The only problem is it's extremely short. I'm literally getting to Jimmy's house at like 5 in the morning on the 30th, and we're just barreling out to Vegas as fast as we can. And then going out there, probably going to be filming almost nonstop. And we got to pile back in the car midday on the 31st and just barrel back so that way you can be back in time for the new year, which is a bummer. But you know what? It's going to be awesome, even though it's going to be fast. So that's definitely how I see it, you know. But, you know, it'll be what it'll be. Hey, what's up, Chris? Merry Christmas to all and yourself. So do you guys want me to talk a little bit about kind of like my favorite projects over 2017 and stuff that like never made it to air. I actually have dropping tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. a little fast Christmas recap video where I just show some of my favorite, and there's no way I could cram all my favorite episodes in there. So I just took like pieces from episodes that I found enjoyable and just threw them into a video and said, okay, cool, let's call this a video. So, you know, that was kind of the whole plan with that. So that's gonna be fun. So Turkham asked, so because Turkham is the only person who's commented so far, Turkham wins. So I'd probably have to say, starting out, at least in the schedule of videos that was released last year over beginning of this year over spring break, I had acquired an old bed frame, much to the chagrin of my welding instructor, and decided that, you know what, an old metal bed frame is an absolutely perfect item to build a saw cart on. So that's pretty much what I started doing. Is I started welding up the saw cart out of an old bed frame, and to this very day I still use the thing with my saw, and it is probably one of the more, when I say useful projects that I've done, it's something that I made thinking, oh, this is gonna be cool, you know, I'm not gonna use it too much, and every single time I go and use my saw, I'm like, man, I'm so glad I built that thing. It has come in so handy on so many occasions. I'm just like, that was a good build project. I need to do more like those. So there was that. And then the funny thing is, this kind of rolls over from the last year, but in 2016 for Christmas, I went down to visit my family, and because it was a very fast trip, I wasn't going to drive down to Southern California and then drive right back like a day or two later. So what I did is I just rode Amtrak's bus and train down overnight, and then took the train back during the day, which is actually a good idea looking back at it, even though it wasn't the most enjoyable trying to sleep on a bus, leaving San Francisco at like 11 o'clock at night to get into Santa Barbara around like 6 in the morning to wait an hour outside for the 7 a.m. train. But oh well, it was what it was. But around that time is actually when I got to start talking to Jimmy over on Twitter, and turns out he was in Salinas, and that's where one of the bus stops was. So I was like, oh, if I'm, you know, up for it at the bus stop because it stops for a couple minutes in Salinas, I might drop off a Maker coin or two out there, you know, let you know. I ended up snoozing right through the Salinas bus stop going back, but it turns out that he'd come up to San Francisco frequently, so we ended up meeting over at the Ferry Building in SF in 2017, and that just started the whole snowball of awesomeness with projects with him. So that's pretty much the short story of how I got to know Jimmy, which is always crazy how I end up meeting people, but that was just like, that was fun. That one never really made it into a video, but you guys are familiar with the Calvin and Jimmy show that we've done and other videos that he's been featured in and things like that. So that's kind of how we got started. Then there was Bay Area Maker Fair, which was absolutely awesome because every year that I've gone, I've known more people get to come out, things like that. So it was cool. You know, it was Jimmy's first time. And then it was cool when all of a sudden Angus from Maker's Muse is like, hey guys, I'm going to be able to go to Maker Fair. And I'm like, wait. Which Maker Fair? You're going to New York, but you're going to Bay Area? Oh, sweet. You know, it was like, that was really cool because he was out there. And the funny part was me and Jimmy was running around all like, hey, did anybody see Angus? Oh yeah, he was just here, which was like the running gag, like for the better part of the day was it just seemed like the whole time we were running around, everybody's like, oh yeah, he was just here. He was just here. And we're just like, okay, we're eventually going to find the dude, but where are we going to find him? Where are we going to find him? That whole thing. So that was fun just because we, you know, ran into him in like between two buildings. I think while we were still trying to find the media lounge, which I found the second day and was like, it's not worth going into. But the funny thing was, Funny thing was, we're standing outside. They were like, "Where the heck are we going?" Hey, what's up, guys? And this little Australian dude comes running out of the building, and it takes me like a second to turn my head. And Jimmy's just busting up laughing as Angus is all like, "Oh my gosh, it's you!" I'm like, "Oh, hey!" Almost doing like a double take. That it was him. So that was absolutely awesome, and the fact that I got to run him all around San Francisco during his like 12 hours of downtime before his flight left for Australia. So that was cool, getting to show him around, just getting to hang out with him, that whole thing. It definitely was one of those cases of it was like, it'd be really cool if I get to meet this person, but because they live all the way, on the other side of the world, I don't think that'll happen. So when it finally does, it's absolutely awesome. And then getting to meet all kinds of different people over at Bay Area Maker Faire was a blast, and things like that. So that was definitely cool. Then there was definitely, let me think. There was the high and the low of when I went down to Southern California and took my compressed GoPro rig, the one that's the smaller version of the second gen one that has the curved back handles. Well, I took that down to Southern California, and I'm like, oh man, this thing would be awesome to take out in the ocean. So me and my ocean filming partner in crime, Danielle, drive to originally our first beach that we were going to go to, which was, I think, Point Mugu State Beach or something like that. And we get there, and it's just absolutely packed with people. The waves are just pounding like crazy. We take one look at it and we go, nope, not happening. So she remembers there's like some secluded public beach. So we're cruising down the road. Get there, like, awesome. This seems a lot calmer, a lot simpler. It's somewhere new. This should be fun. We get out there. I'm looking like a complete fool on a boogie board with my camera rig with one camera facing forward, one camera facing me. It was crazy. And then the sad part was when I had to be filming out there with the rig, I think I've determined what happened was I inadvertently, my thumb slipped from the tops of the camera handle where I was kind of bracing myself down onto the camera. And then I think because the mount wasn't as tight, because it was the cheap camera one, I think I accidentally pushed the camera forwards with my fingers, and it went, slipped out. Footage never to be found again. Camera never to be found again, to my knowledge. So it was only like a $55 camera. So it was a bummer losing it. It was a bummer losing the footage, but it definitely was one of those wake-up calls that, yeah, I think I need to come up with a better securement method for it. So that definitely taught me a few things about that. And it was sad losing it, but it was awesome just to get out there and do some ocean filming and look like a complete klutz out there, with the fact that I'm like trying to like go over waves that are already breaking with my boogie board and just getting slammed. It was definitely interesting. And another probably really memorable one would definitely have to be Haas Tech, which is an event that Haas Automation holds every year for a couple of days out of the week, where they bring in a bunch of vendors, they cater a bunch of food, they give guided tours of the facility. If anybody is ever interested in machining or manufacturing or anything like that, it is definitely worth going to. Oh, good comment by TK. He goes, nothing wrong with losing. Nothing worse than losing a camera. Definitely need a life raft for cameras. Yeah, the problem is in our case, because the cheap camera has an LCD on the back, and we were trying to see if you could actually see the LCD when you were underwater or even above the water, which we determined it was just like, forget it. Can't see anything. But that's what we were testing was, does the LCD even give you any advantages in the water? Problem was we didn't have any kind of float, and I was stupid, and I didn't realize the camera came with a safety line, which I really should have done. Something, even just tied a string onto it. Now I know to add some kind of floating backdoor to the camera, as well as some kind of safety line, either or. Although I will admit, I actually kind of like my camera rigs to be a little bit, when I say neutrally buoyant, or almost a little bit negatively buoyant, so that way they actually don't want to float up. They actually stay more steady in the water, if you know what I mean. It's definitely a gamble, but being that we have the wrist strap to the camera rig, literally unless you took a knife and cut your hand off, you're not going to lose the rig that way. So I think it's more or less just attaching the camera to the rig, which is then attached to you, means that even if it got lost, at least the whole rig is easier to locate than just a little camera. Hey, what's up, Jeff? Thanks, dude. It is awesome being over the 1K mark, and it is also super awesome that you gained a bunch of subs and that me and Jimmy are going to be out there in Vegas to celebrate end of the year with you. That's going to be absolutely awesome. Cannot wait for that. Should be fun. I'm definitely going to film a vlog about it, and when cell service permits, maybe do a little bit of live streaming from like the middle of nowhere or something like that. It should be fun. Okay, so going back to the Hostech thing, which was really memorable, what happened is my mom was nice enough to buy me the plane tickets to go down and back because she partly has a bunch of Southwest points and was nice enough to do it for me, which was like, oh, that's hey, what's up? We got Jimmy. He must have snuck back into the storeroom or something like that. So that was really nice of my mom to do that. I was literally like not sure if I was going to be able to make it or not, because I wanted to make sure that, because when Hostech Falls is right around when midterms were, so I wanted to make sure that Hostech wasn't going to coincide with me frantically studying for midterms or anything like that. So I kind of had to wait until the beginning of the semester to book my ticket. So I'm sitting in a math class going, I hate this class, waiting frantically for breaks so I can scroll through Southwest to text my mom, yeah, I'd like this flight and this flight. And what I had to do is had an art class in the morning on a Thursday, which was the last day of classes for me. And I had a night accounting class that started on Mondays. So I knew I had a Thursday afternoon to Monday afternoon time window that I could fly out, go down, and fly back with. So what I did is I literally went to my morning art class from 9 to 11, and 9 to 12, I mean, then went and had my little hour-long break. Then I went to my environmental science class from 1 to about 2:30 or 3-ish, then ran outside to where my mom was because she drove the car over to pick me up, threw my art stuff into the back of the car, grabbed my backpack and my suitcase, which I had in the car, and then jumped on the BART, which is the train system that takes you from San Francisco to all points in the East Bay area. Jumped on that and then scooted on over to Oakland Airport in record time, and then kind of twiddled my thumbs for about 3 hours and did a little bit of video editing over there. Flew down, got picked up by my dad at Burbank Airport, went home, went to bed. Next morning, wake up with my dad, jump in the car, scoot on over to Hostech like first thing in the morning. It was a good idea. Get over there, get all our stuff, accidentally get put in the wrong line, and then we're like, yeah, we've done this. Hey, thanks for the $2, Jimmy. It's definitely making good on Super Chat now. Pretty much just go running around there on our own self-guided tour, doing pretty much whatever the heck we wanted, because we got there on a Friday. There weren't a whole lot of people, which was really nice, because normally it's absolutely packed, but I think by Friday, a lot of people are like, well, I got to go back to work or whatever. So worked out good. So we pretty much had like free reign of the catwalk area where we did most of our filming of the manufacturing areas. Then we get down to where the golf carts are. And normally there's like a 20-minute wait of people to get on the golf carts. We get down there like, hey, you guys want to go on a golf cart tour? We're like, heck yeah, I'll just jump on any golf cart you want. And we got probably the best guide ever. And to this day, I regret not getting his name down, because if I knew who he was, I would have personally sent him a little thank you note package thing for being an absolutely awesome tour guide. I mean, this guy was super knowledgeable, super friendly, absolutely awesome. And the irony is, of all the videos I shot there, the whole like 20 or 30-minute long tour video, which was just uncut of us doing the golf cart ride, is the most viewed video from all of Hostech. I think it's partly just because it shows you how big it is. And even then, you still are only covering about a third to half of the facility. It is absolutely massive. So that was an absolute blast. Ended up meeting some people that I knew at the event, which was cool. Got to meet Mark from the Host Tip of the Day, which was cool because he goes, "Oh yeah, I think I've seen your videos," and I'm like, "Wait. The dude who does the Tip of the Day videos has seen my videos," which was like a total like shock for me, but that was really cool. Then ended up shooting a bit of tiny house stuff with my sister. Flew back home, went to my night accounting class, and back to school as usual, which was definitely crazy, but it was amazing that I pulled it off. So that was definitely a fun one. And then there's been just like other fun little projects that I've done throughout the year, like helping my dad out with his lathe that he blew the gearbox up on, meeting up with Ashley from Chip Builds and doing the glow spinners, which was kind of a disaster starting out and it ended up working. I think definitely another two memorable projects would be the titanium firefly for a friend of ours who was graduating. That was absolutely a blast to make, and definitely was cool knowing that I made something that unique in such a unique material, and seeing her reaction to that. And then the other funny one that me and Danielle did was the 3D printed party poppers. I swear we did not get done with that until like 11:30 at night, and then I had to be up at about 6 in the morning to go down with Danielle to Pomona, which is about a good 2-hour drive away from where I live, to go to our friend's graduation. So we got very little sleep that night. We're like dragging ourselves into the graduation, saying hi to our friends' parents, like, "Hey, yeah, we stayed up late last night, but we made it." So that was definitely another fun one. So it's been a year full of just absolutely crazy stuff, and I'm excited for what 2018 holds. It should be more awesome. You guys have any like favorite episodes or moments or comments or something, throw them down below, because I feel like I've been rambling for too long all by myself here. TK said that he has he's working on a new dragon design for Jimmy to fall in love with. That previous dragon you did, I saw it when I was over at Jimmy's house the other week. It was awesome, especially being done in that marble PLA with that speckled look. That was really cool. I told Jimmy he should go over it with a little bit of India ink and alcohol to give it more of kind of like a dark effect in the recesses and kind of give it a slightly grayer look, so it looks even more like marble. That would look absolutely absolutely awesome. Okay, Jimmy's got to bounce. Have try not die out there, dude. I know it's the day before Christmas and people are crazy, but we need you for Vegas. But yeah, the TK's right. Fingers crossed for another crazy year. It should be fun. As for stuff that never made it to air this year, one of the things that I've been working on and off is trying to make a search and rescue drone, if you will, using my tricopter that I've had for a long time. And I've been working on this on and off, as trying to fly in San Francisco is kind of difficult. It's congested airspace. I'm not 100% sure if it's even legal to fly a drone out here of the size that I have. So after the FAA put in all their restrictions, I'm just like, I think I'm going to hold off on flying up here. And also, I just feel more comfortable flying down south where my parents are, because I know of large open areas that I can fly in that are definitely, when I say more flying friendly, in terms of if it goes down, it lands in the field, no big deal. Out here, it's kind of like, well, did it land in somebody's backyard or like way up a tree or something? Terrible things like that. Hey, what's up, Chelsea? Thanks. It's a weird feeling finally being in the 1K crowd. It's like, I'm one of them. It's like, it's a weird feeling. At the same time, it doesn't change anything. It's just like, yeah, I got more features. You know, it's weird. It's hard to describe because you're like super happy to be at this point because you know you've unlocked more viewership and you know it's hopefully only going to go up from here. But at the same time, you're just kind of like, still feels the same though. It's still me. You know, it's whatever. It's a weird feeling in that way. Is you still feel the same, but you know you've unlocked like an achievement, and you've unlocked like another achievement level, if you will. It's hard to describe, but it's a cool feeling. But the concept is very simple. I've taken the search and rescue drone. The idea is it has a little payload that has a parachute underneath, and then it drops it. So say you're out looking for somebody. I don't have very long range on mine, but the idea was just to see if somebody with a hobby drone could drop something off to somebody. Let's say they're stranded on a cliff edge, or they're stranded in an area that you can't really get a helicopter into. Could you use a drone to drop off a package, say with food, medical supplies, both, something like that? So the idea was have one of those toy parachute models. I got the parachute guy off the bottom and pretty much strapped like a energy bar to the underside of it, made a awful drop mechanism. Still to this day, I can't figure out how to get the parachute to work. And I've also debated, is it really even worth having the parachute on there, or could I get away with a streamer? Haven't really figured that out. That's all 2018 things. But the main problems that I ran into was, one, either when I'd go to drop the item, the parachute would get stuck in the parachute holder and it just wouldn't drop, period. Or even worse was, there were a couple of times where the parachute would inflate, then it would start to move up. And there's actually one time, I got to try and see if I can find the video footage of it, where the parachute inflates, gets stuck in the rear tail rotor, and down it went. And my dad's like, oh wait, I think it's gonna get stuck, you're going down. I'm like, I can tell in my video goggles I'm going down. And at that point, there's nothing you can do. So I just cut the gas, because I knew if I kept the gas on, it'd probably do worse. So I just cut the gas, crossed my fingers, and prayed that the crash wouldn't be too bad. And thankfully, it had rained a couple days before out in the field. So it wasn't like soggy muddy, but it was definitely softer than it would normally be, which would just be hard packed clay. So that helped with the impact, but it actually cracked one of the booms, kind of did a little bit of damage to the drone. It was definitely fixable if I had the components, but it was pretty much at that point, I'm like, I'm done. I quit. So that pretty much put an end to that, but it's something that I've been working on. And I also want to work on a ground-based little telepresence robot that does a similar thing, can like drive into somewhere, things like that. So those are things that I've always wanted to do. And now that I have more, when I say knowledge and things like that about how to do these things and resources, it's now like, yeah, I really want to try and do that. Mostly just to see how economically could it be done in terms of, I understand that the big boys, like what TK says, there's drones in the UK for search and rescue around snowy mountain ranges, but that's the big boys. Yeah, I want to see how easy it is for somebody in the hobby sector to make something. Let's just say that they live in an area where they know there's a high likelihood of something happening, or they just want to try and show, hey, you don't always need something super expensive to kind of, you know, make a, not so much make a statement, but to kind of be like, look, yeah, you can do this for a lot less than you think. You might have to sacrifice a few fancy features, but at the same time, you can still do the same general concept. And the idea of having a couple of cheaper, lower cost items versus one very expensive one brings up the whole advantage of redundancy and things like that. So it's more or less just can it be done? How good is it? That sort of thing. And there's also been a couple of other things that I'm going to keep quiet for now that I've wanted to do for a long time. But now that I've got some more knowledge and resources, I'm like, that might be worth a try just to see if it can be done. Kat just jumped on and said congrats and Merry Christmas, and much appreciated. Same to you and your furry little friend over there in Liechtenstein. Yeah, TK, it's definitely handy. Although I will say one thing that I found interesting, it should be noted that I'm using the very cheapest brand name video goggles like those FPV goggles that you can buy is, at least on the really tiny screen that I have to see inside and the wonderfully low resolution on it, even at about 50 to 60 feet up, with the GoPro recording in 1080, when I'm getting back is not even close. It's probably best equated to like 240. It's not that there's lag, it's just the video quality is really grainy. I could not see my dad standing in the field when I told him go stand between two trees about 300 feet away. So I knew approximately where he was, but he's all waving at me and I'm like, I can't see you. I mean, I knew approximately where he was, so I actually had to drop altitude and get closer to finally be like, oh yeah, there he is. There's a reason why I told him to go between two landmarks that I knew. I told him go anywhere in that area, but I want to have at least a landmark so I don't burn my whole 8 minutes of battery life trying to find you, and then I got to go back and take off again. But it was definitely interesting that, at least with the video equipment that I had, how difficult it was to spot somebody in a field if they're not wearing any kind of high visibility clothing. He was just wearing like regular clothing standing in a dirt field, and I'm like, I can't see you. So that's definitely something to keep in mind is with the video back, if you're trying to search for somebody, it can be a little bit challenging. That said, if you know their approximate area, it helps. One other thing I want to try is actually using a model airplane to do the searching with, because you could get a lot more runtime out of it, because you can fly up to altitude, coast down, fly up, coast down, things like that. Sort of like that. So Nitrobeck says that he thinks he's the only person into 3D printing that isn't into drones. Actually, there's a lot of people who are into 3D printing who aren't into drones or model aircraft. For a long time, I'd been fascinated by model airplanes, got into them for a while, and then I moved, got out because I couldn't really fly them around here, that sort of thing. But TK's right. They're pretty costly. Even to build your own, once you get a good radio, and even if you're not doing live video first person view, it is ridiculously expensive. To be honest, you're easily in it $200-300 minimum. I mean, I was looking at drone electronics packages on Amazon, and that'll easily run you like $100+ not even including that's including a frame, but that does not include a radio. It might include a battery, but that sort of thing. So it's definitely an expensive hobby, and if things go wrong, it can get very expensive. God forbid you land in a body of water, or you just lose the thing, period. That would suck. Yeah, even out in the States, drone laws are pretty restrictive. TK is saying UK drone laws are really restrictive. He said he could not film a castle to make a model from the footage. Wow. Out here, we're a little more lax, but the FAA is pretty much like, if you want to do any kind of commercial work with it, you got to have a license from them or forget it. They just don't care. They will come down on you. And my dad was lamenting the fact that he has a friend who did aerial photography with actually a tethered helium blimp. And he was saying that his friend was lamenting the fact that he was losing work because of the drones. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. If the FAA finds out that the other people are doing the work, commercial work with their drone without a license, and the FAA comes down on them, I'm like, they're going to be out of business for good. Between the fines and everything like that, you know, it's not fun. For a while there, we were doing good with like lax drone laws, and then it kind of just went all psycho crazy. And I'm hoping they get a little more common sense-ish again, but I don't know. They've been a bit too vilified, so that's why I've kind of laid low on them for a while, hoping it would kind of mellow out and then be like, hey, here's a productive use of one. Hope you like it. That sort of thing. So Mitch 3D is saying that his CNC Artemis is on hold. It needs troubleshooting. Is that another one of their newer Deltas? I haven't kept up on all of that. It's definitely interesting. I give them credit though for their interesting method of using an accelerometer to tap the build plate and find the level of it. That's definitely an interesting use for it. Nitrobeck says he has a buddy getting his drone license in the US, and sadly, if he is working on getting an actual pilot's license for a helicopter, that is easier to get, he says. Yeah, I would probably agree with that one. I know a friend who in his spare time is a certified flight instructor, and I've gone flying with him and friends before. He was telling me all the stuff that's required for him to keep his instructor's license is absolutely insane, but it makes sense. But to get a pilot's license, it's expensive, but it's definitely doable if you have the time and the money and that sort of thing. It's mostly just getting up the hours after you've gotten your license to go on to other things, which is why you'll see a lot of people flying like aerial sign operations and things like that, because it's an easy way to get paid, get your flight hours and things like that. But yeah, I have not looked into getting an FAA waiver for the commercial part, but I can definitely understand that it's pretty restrictive, which in one sense I can understand, but in another sense, it's a little bit like, okay, guys, we're being a little bit crazy here maybe, but oh well. So Burning Gem says, anyone else watching me while the kids are watching Beauty and the Beast on TV? No, I am watching myself on my laptop right now, talk on my laptop like a crazy person to all you guys. Oh, wow. It's their high-end Delta that uses FSR. Not sure what that is. It's built like a tank at over 22 kilograms. Oh my gosh. That's what? Almost 50 pounds US? Man, can you like double that thing as like a battering ram or something like that? That sounds absolutely insane. So TK said there's also a flight sim that you can log hours with. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Mostly when you're getting your license, once you've gotten to the point where you can solo, it's pretty much, I think at that point, just getting your hours in, both in the air and things like that. So I don't know very much about it, but it's definitely interesting. I've personally flown a Cessna light aircraft under the supervision of my friend, and it is absolutely amazing to do if you ever get the opportunity to do it. Definitely go for it. Although I will warn you, it is extremely expensive, even if you want to just go up for a little flight around for fun, just because of the cost of renting the airplane, fuel, the pilot. But it's one of those things that ranks very high on my, if you ever get the chance to do it list. It's awesome. Stinkering Carter said, when am I getting the 1K bowl haircut? That's TBD. Okay, so FSR is force sensing resistance under the bed. That's interesting, because I know getting it to do the actual probing and finding locations can be very interesting, the different methods that people have come up with using actual touch sensors like a BL Touch, using an accelerometer where the tip bumps down, things like that. So it's definitely interesting, the various methods. I personally still prefer the manual bed leveling method. I know as much as people thumb their nose at it and go, oh, that's not specialized. You know what? It works. I personally like simple, so that's just me. So TK said flying is easy. Oh yes. Once you get in the air, it's actually relatively simple if you know what you're doing to keep the aircraft on a level heading. You definitely got to keep your eyes out on your altimeter though, just to make sure you're not going or just like crawling up into airspace you're not supposed to, especially if you're given a very narrow altitude from ATC. But it's not, when I say it's not hard to do, it's like driving a car. When you're on the freeway and it's like only you on the freeway, it's just like, oh, this is simple. I'm just cruising along. When you get other vehicles in there, you got to merge or things like that. That's when it gets a little scary. So you're definitely right with that one. But it's definitely something that I have a lot of respect for with pilots, the stuff that they know how to do. It's incredible. Mitch said he bought a Tiny Whip FPV. It's fun without causing expensive damage. Yeah, those little ones, those things are darn near indestructible. I always tell friends, it's like, if you want to get into flying drones or just get into stuff in general, get one of those little ones that's like 50, 60 bucks online. Make sure you can buy replacement parts for it and get one that's got some decent spacing between the motors so it's not crazy unstable. But they are a blast, and they're seriously tough unless you dunk the thing in the pool or something. They just come back for more, and replacement parts are pretty cheap as well. I mean, they're definitely fun even if you have a bigger one, because you can practice doing moves and things like that with the little one, getting more comfortable, then move on to the bigger one. So I definitely recommend them. And if for whatever reason you just can't pick it up, you're not out that much, so you could always just pass it off to somebody else as a gift if you want or something like that. Yeah, TK agrees with me. Manual is best. And Mitch said he likes manual, but for a Delta, it's a pain. Yeah, that's the one drawback to Deltas is leveling. You definitely need to either be a mathematician or have a good method of probing the bed. So Deltas are definitely an example where you need something that'll help you do it. With a Cartesian machine like the Ultimaker or the Thingomatic right there, they don't care. They really don't need it. The Thingomatic, I mean, I don't even think I've officially leveled the bed on that thing. I definitely need to go in there and add some springs so I can do that, but it's such a tiny build bed anyways, it doesn't really care, which is nice. Well, do you guys want me to go on, or do you want me to call it a night here with the stream? Don't want to seem like I'm rambling for too long, but I wanted you guys' opinion as well on this, as this was definitely a very unplanned stream. It was like, oh, that happened. Okay. Go from there. So you guys let me know in the comments below, because I just don't want to sit here and ramble forever. But if you guys have discussion topic ideas or want my opinions on things, let me know. So TK said he needs to set up his wood lathe of death again. I don't know if you should set that up if it's called the wood lathe of death. That sounds a little bit freaky. Okay, have a good one, Kat. Sorry the stream was so early on your end. Yeah, Nitro, it's been fun doing this. The only thing is, whenever I do a stream by myself, I'm always feeling like, is everybody just sticking around to be nice? Or, it's a little bit hard for me because I like getting feedback from people like, yeah, this is awesome, or, oh, talk about this. But then when it's kind of me just going, yap, 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 sometimes I just feel like I'm talking to like an empty audience, and then I'm kind of like, and then what do you want? It's a little bit difficult if you know what I mean. It's a little bit like, so what does everybody want to know? So that's why sometimes I get a little bit like, well, what do you guys want to know? That's why sometimes I'm a little bit like that, if that makes sense. But thanks, TK. Yeah, it's fun interacting with you guys. So I'll keep this going for a bit. How about I'll keep it going till about 7 on mine, which is about another 15 minutes, and then we'll decide from there. So you guys dump some good stuff in the chat, and we can all talk about it. Nitrovex said, as someone who does podcasts, having someone else with you to bounce ideas off of makes it much easier. Oh, heck yes. That's why it's so nice having Jimmy on the show, because we can just like totally like feed off each other and stuff like that. Or even just having another person there is nice, because you can kind of feed off each other and, makes the conversation a little more interesting. At the beginning of the show, I actually did kind of like a top memories of episodes for 2017, Tinkering Corner. So TK said, do I have a resin-based printer, or was that Jimmy's build? Actually, that was not even my machine or Jimmy's machine. That actually belongs to Lucky 13 Vinyl. the guy who does all the sticker work for us. He bought one a long time ago, gave it to Jimmy to build, and then life got busy for all of us, and then we finally had time to get together and work on the thing. So we all drove down to Jimmy's, put the thing together, got it going. It's a P Poly Moai, and I have to say, that thing went together super easily. We literally pulled the box out, and within like 10 minutes, we had the frame. When I say roughly built, we didn't have everything together on it, but we had the rough shape of the frame done. Then like 20 minutes, the whole frame was done. We were already installing like the bed lowering device. A lot of it's really just pre-assembled components. The only tricky part was the manual at times was a little bit cryptic, so we did jump on over to Chris over at Practical Printing's videos a couple of times, and then Chris was also nice enough to give Jimmy his cell number. So at one point we just gave him a quick phone call and we're like, hey dude, we can't access these functions. He's like, oh, that's simple, just update to the latest firmware. 2 seconds later, it's like, hey. So you got to remember, the machine that Lucky 13 Vinyl got was one of the very first Kickstarter ones. So it had sat in the box forever. So it had like the first or second gen software, and there were like 5 other versions after that. So after that, I mean, it was simple. Me and Jimmy got it together, poured some resin in the vat, leveled the vat, did a test print, turned out good, did a couple more prints, and we're like, wow. I mean, we literally had the thing up and running with all 3 of us working on it. And then Lucky 13 left about after lunchtime. He wanted to head back home. But in total, we had the thing printing in under 4 hours, which is really impressive considering that we had visions of it taking all day. And we're like, oh, it's done? Sweet. So Nitrobex was, actually, I'll jump to TK first. He was asking, am I thinking of getting a resin printer? Yes and no. And here's the reason why I say that. Yes, on one hand, I'd love to have a resin printer. They would be absolutely awesome to have for prototyping. At the same time, honestly, they're very messy. The resin smells bad. And that's kind of the main drawbacks. If I had one, I'd definitely have to store it down in the garage, which isn't the end of the world. Now that I have a laptop, I can just run that downstairs. That's usually what I do when I'm machining stuff anyways, is I just run the laptop downstairs, set it up on the washing machine across from the CNC machine. I can write my code, things like that down there. But honestly, I'm 50-50 on if I would get a resin printer. If somebody was nice enough to send me one to try out, I would not turn down the offer, definitely. But at the same time, it's a little bit like, much as I'd like to have one, at the same time, it's a little bit like, well, if I had one, where would it go? It's more or less a space issue for me. But at the same time, if I did get my hands on one, it would definitely get used. So it's kind of like a one thing feeds the other sort of situation. But it's not something that I'm looking at buying anytime soon. But if I manage to get one, it would be very helpful. So I kind of look at it that way, because usually what I'd use my Ultimaker for is prototyping a part out before I send it off to my friend's professional print service to get resin printed. So I kind of use it as a cost-cutting measure to double check things when I can in-house before I send it out for professional work, so it saves on lead time and saves on costs. And sometimes I'll make a full part using my printer. It's just at the same time there's sadly limitations to what an FDM printer can do, and I'm aware of that, but you know, that sort of thing. So TK said he's thinking about getting the D7 or a Photon, not huge build volume, but good enough for his tanks. Yeah, for me, honestly, I need something about the size of the Moai, because when I do bigger stuff like this railcar shell, which I had SLS printed by Sculpteo in Oakland, this one angled, I've checked it and it fits inside the build volume, but I need a bigger printer to do bigger stuff like this. And definitely if I had a resin printer in the house and there was demand for things like this and people wanted it printed by me, being able to do it in-house would probably be a cost-cutting measure. that's another thing that I'd love to cover if I had one is it really cheaper to have a resin printer in-house for bigger stuff or not? That sort of thing. So it's definitely one of those cases of, you got to figure it out. Burning Gem says he has the early version of a D7. It works, but Calvin is right about the smell, etc. Cost of resin versus cheap filament. Buy some things you could have done in resin for detail like jewelry. Yeah, definitely. I can definitely say this much. One other thing I'd love to try doing is like lost, when I say lost wax casting, I'm talking either like a 3D printed castable wax or actual casting wax that gets burnt out. I've always wanted to try doing something like that for little detail parts for trains, but at this point, that is not something that I've even ventured into doing. I do not have any kind of furnace, anything like that. So if I did that, I'd probably have to team up with somebody who has that equipment and do it at their end, even see if it's doable, and then go from there. But if you're doing a lot of detailed stuff, or you need to have that ability to do fast turnover in-house, it's definitely useful. And I will say having to wait about a week to get prints from a professional printing service is a little bit of a drawback when you're up against the wall or you want to try and get something prototyped or something like that. But, that's just kind of one of the things that you have to keep in mind. Yeah, the quality of the prints, I do have to say that you can get is absolutely incredible. Let me see if I can find one that we did on the Moai really fast. Here we go. This is one of the little 4 Moai heads that came on a file with the printer. These just printed like this upside down on the build bed. They were hollowed out on the inside, which is cool. And then on the back, inside the O's, are 2 little holes, and at the top of the head is a 3rd drain hole. So the cool thing was, as it was printing, the model was actually draining itself, which that's actually a really smart idea on whoever designed this, and especially if it's something where it's like the top of the head where you're going to do a little bit of sand and prime on the model anyways, might as well throw it there, So I do have to say the quality, though, of good quality resin prints is absolutely amazing and definitely makes it worth the added time to pull it off. But, you got to keep in mind as well, cleaning the prints, curing the prints, things like that. But it's for sure something that when I say it's a very, very specialized field, I still don't think it's something that everybody's going to be racing off to go, oh yeah, I'm going to buy a resin printer and I'm going to like print snowball makers with it. I don't see that happening. It's not practical and it's not a good use of it. But for small stuff, like when I do detail parts and things like that, I think it really, really has its place there. But that's just my personal opinion. So Nitrobex a while ago asked, what do I think will be the greatest achievement or trend we will see for 3D printing in 2018? That's a good one, because honestly, this is my personal opinion here, and I know I'm probably in the minority when I say this, but I definitely feel like 3D printers, at least FDM ones, have really hit almost like a stalemate. I mean, I know it's a terrible thing to say or term to use, but it almost just feels like we've kind of hit the point where we've driven the cost down a lot. We've come out with new features, and then it's like, okay, so here's another machine with new features. I mean, it's like, it almost feels a little bit like it's kind of hit the end of the line. So the one thing that I think would be really interesting to see, and this is not me trying to, when I say talk bad about anything, this is just my observations, but after watching Chaos Cortex video about his Prusa Mark III, and then I did not watch Tom's 3DP's video, but I saw his tweets about it and some other people commenting who had seen the live stream. It sounds like while the machine definitely is a vast improvement, it still seems like there's some limitations to it, especially the when I say limitations, I mean in terms of the stepper drivers are only so good at detecting when a bump has happened. The filament sensor only detects the filaments out a certain percentage of the time. And I'm not saying that having these features is not really nice. It's very good, but at the same time, it's not as fail-safe as I feel it could be. But then again, I understand it's kind of in slightly uncharted territory. But the one thing that I really would love to see in the future in 2018 would be to actually see some kind of encoder feedback on the steppers, turning them into what are called servo motors. So all it's doing is it's just double checking that every time the stepper's moved, the sensor is picking up that movement. And it's a very simple way to know, yes, the stepper has skipped steps, so something's not right here, versus kind of relying on like a voltage spike to, which is I assume how the sensor's doing it, which can be a little bit iffy, if you will. So I would love to see actually some kind of closed loop system coming into 3D printers, at least in the form of a servo drive or an encoder on the back of the stepper, which I know has been done, but I have not really seen implemented into the control system, just so that way the machine has a redundancy of knowing that, yes, I am actually moving as far as I said I did, and it would definitely help pick up on skipped steps or things like that. And as for the filament sensor, I'm not exactly sure how the Prusa one works, but personally, if I was to do a filament sensor, I would go really basic with just a very simple micro switch that when the filament's in there, it's, you know, open or closed electrically, whatever works. And then when it fails, it trips it, runs out of filament, stops it, retracts it, does whatever. The power off function is pretty cool, although I've also seen that can be a little bit dodgy on if it'll actually move the head over or things like that. But it's definitely a step in the right direction. But I feel like there's a lot of things that could be done differently. So probably what I would say that I'd love to see on machines is some kind of closed loop feedback. So that way we're not just relying on electrical signals. We're actually relying on a known sensor pickup doing something. That's something I'd love to see with FDM machines. I would also love to see more machines having a power out function where, you know, even if it requires a separate box that you buy separately that has enough capacitive power on board to drive the thing for 5 seconds to pull the head up, home the machine, or at least just pull the head up and stop there, you know, gives it more than enough time to safely pause the print and at least pull the head up and ideally pull it away from the print. So if it's going to ooze, it does it away. But I would love to see that kind of capability on a machine become more common. That would definitely be useful, or something like that. The capacitor technology exists out there. I think it's just implementing it into the machines and making it happen, which is the slightly difficult part. I mean, they've got trams in China that are run off supercapacitors that charge for like a minute. And the thing can drive for like 5 kilometers at like 50 kilometers an hour. So it's a train, but the capacitor technology has gotten to the point where it's completely doable. It's just making it happen. I mean, the trains that I run have a little capacitor board built into the electronics decoder that allows me under normal conditions to, once it's charged up, drive over dirty track at a decent clip, and it just does not care. Which is really nice on the club layout when we go to clean the track. We just start the train going, and it just cruises around. It doesn't care if there's a little dirt in one spot, it just kind of coasts right over it and then picks up the power again, which is which is really cool. So that's definitely power outage is something. And then TK said he wants to see development in slicers. Yep, that too. I feel like they've come a ways, but I feel like there's always a little bit of room for improvement. I'd love to see the ability in a slicer, like what Prusa's slicer did with the ability to adapt the layer height as you go. I'd love to see more slicers offering that ability, because that would be a very nice function, especially for cosplay builders or model makers like me, because then you can make, you know, surfaces work better, things like that. That would be cool. All right, Burning Gems, thanks for jumping on, dude. It was awesome having you. Have a good one with the kids, and have a Merry Christmas. Yeah, King Random is totally right. He said, none of the stuff I'm talking about is rocket science. People cheer on Joseph Prusa like he's God, but there could be a true leap forward. Yeah, you know, I definitely, you know, I give him credit for the things he is doing, and the fact that he's implementing them is awesome. You know, totally cool. Totally praise the guy for doing that. But yeah, you're right. At the same time, this is stuff that, like what I've been saying with the servo feedback, modern CNC machines use brushless DC servo motors, and some of them even have linear scales, which are crazy accurate as well. So you get double feedback to within like microns on some machines for CNC machining precision stuff. So it knows exactly where it is in space. So the whole idea of servo technology, I mean, I understand it's a bit more expensive and they're not as abuse friendly as steppers are, but I'm really surprised that people haven't really tried to implement at least some kind of feedback on the back of the stepper more, being that servo technology has been around forever. So I'd really like to see that happening at some point in the future. Don't know if it'll happen anytime soon, but it's been out there for years. So I'm surprised nobody's been like, hey, let's try actually implementing it onto a machine and going from there. But that's just, you know, that's just me. R1 Tool, I think that's how you say his name, said inkjet printers have accurate linear encoders on them, and they are made for pennies. Yeah, they're literally a plastic disc with black lines on it, a little brake beam sensor, and they don't even use stepper motors anymore, which is a bummer for us hobbyists. They just use a DC motor, and the thing is going bip, 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 back and forth, but because it can count the number of steps, it knows exactly when to spit out the ink. And you get a decent print, you know, so it's crazy. But yeah, it's interesting how that technology has been around for a long time, but it hasn't really been implemented, which is something I really want to see. So Nitrobeck said he would also love to see another file format other than the STL, because triangles do not make great circles. Darn right on that one. The frustrating thing is when you scale up a big print and the thing is literally like block, 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 and you're like, that's not circular. And I'm looking at it going, my CNC machine with a little bit of backlash could make a better circle than that. You know, that's something I want to see as well, is the machines have the capabilities of being more precise. We're just being held back by the software at this point, which is a little bit frustrating, especially when you want to make a nice model, other than say like a low polygon-ish Christmas tree like this, which I did a video on about a week or so ago. You know, Nitrobeck says he doesn't want paper printers to get into 3D printing. The inkjet printer he has costs $35 with ink in it, and the replacement ink costs $50. Yeah, you know, I used to be big into radio-controlled cars, and the saying always was, they don't make money off the car, they make money off the replacement parts. And it's totally true. When you consider all the time, labor, and effort that goes into making the thing versus, you know, the consumables for it, even though they weren't super expensive, you know, you look at a part and you go, they've probably paid off the mold at this point. They're just sitting there making pure profit off of it, or very close to it. So, you know, it's things like that. I mean, the one thing I will say about computer ink and toner, though, is I understand why it's expensive, but at the same time, it's a little bit like, okay, does it really have to be that expensive? But you know, you gotta say to yourself, how are you gonna make your money? But at the same time, it does suck when it feels like you're spending all your money on consumables when you could just literally go out and buy another machine for less money and get fresh ink that way. Or you could just be like my dad and look for ink cartridges on eBay and things like that. You know, do that sort of thing. But it'll be interesting to see if companies that used to be open source end up kind of going to more of a closed loop ecosystem. That's something that is going to be interesting. And I'm not saying anybody has any plans to do it at this point, but I'm just saying it would be interesting to see if that happens or not. Or we see the opposite. Companies that used to be closed loop decide, the heck with it. We're actually, you know, got so much demand to kind of open the software up. Let's try doing that. So that's something that's another thing that I will be interested to see what happens. I know I'm probably going to get a bunch of hate for saying this, but when I say I'm neutral on open source, in one sense, open source technology has gotten us great leaps and bounds, you know, everything like that. So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's definitely done us good. But at the same time, it's a little bit tricky as well, just because of the fact that, as it's been shown, there's no real, when I say legal clout behind it, it's pretty much more or less a gentleman's handshake agreement that I'm not going to abuse the license on this file. And countries, including ours, haven't really sat down and gone, okay, what's the licensing behind this? You know, it's not like a copyright or a legal contract agreement, which states if you breach this contract, I can sue you for breach of contract. It's pretty much like, okay, please don't use this for anything bad. And you're like, okay, what do? You go out and use it for something bad. And, you know, that sort of thing. It's definitely one of those iffy things. So R1 Tool said Prusa themselves still have not released the firmware for the MK3 with their TMC stepper integration. The source for it, even they recognize the need to hold on to things for their own benefit. Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to get into saying was, the moment you release something publicly, no matter what you do to try and protect it, as we've seen obviously with YouTube and things like that, whoops. Once it's out there in public domain, even if there's rules stating you can't legally copy this or things like that, people are still going to do that. And, you know, then you got to try and chase them down, drag them to court, fill out paperwork. You know, at the end of the day, you got to say to yourself, at what point do I want to make something at least more like a proprietary thing versus not? It's a very, 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 very touchy subject, because I feel like while open source has gotten us a lot of places, at the same time, I kind of feel like it's almost holding us back, because companies might have something nice, but they're scared to release it because they're like, well, is everybody else going to run off with our idea, leave us behind in the dust? And, you know, that sort of thing. So Arcanum70, sorry if I've totally butchered your name on there. He said he thinks the next major breakthrough will be Drive. However, develops it being closed loop, being the servo feedback that I was mentioning. Can't say that I would blame them. Companies have every right to make money. Oh, I get it now. What he's talking about is, you know, keeping certain pieces of the technology kind of in-house. And I totally agree with that one. It's a very, 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 very touchy subject, as we've already seen with MakerBot years ago, when they were open source and then they went closed source. And I'm not going to comment on that part anymore. But at the same time, yeah, it's companies have every right to make money. And at the end of the day, it's their intellectual property. They choose to do with it as they feel fit. And when I say I respect a company's right to keep something in-house, I get that. There's tons of models that I've made of train stuff that, to be honest, half the reason why I don't release them is partly just because I know people can't print them on the right machine. But at the same time, I put so much time and effort into everything that I don't want, you know, somebody running out and abusing my file. I mean, something like my GoPro rig is like, that didn't take much work, and that's something I actually want people to use. I want people to go out and enjoy that. But at the same time, if it's something like this train model that I've had to put multiple iterations into, had to get sent out professionally, and I've got like 20 or 30 bucks at least invested in, I'd love to at least for a while there, at least release it in the form that somebody can purchase the model. So it's available, but at least me as the designer is getting some payback on it. So that's, you know, a good example of me where it's like, I don't just run around willy-nilly sharing all my files, but I do make them accessible for those who want it, you know, that sort of thing. Hey, thanks Eddie for the $5. Means a lot. Now that I have super chat, Jimmy's like, just wait, you'll get donations. I'm like, no, what happened? So I really appreciate that. And sorry if I've totally blown past you, Angus. Thanks for the congrats. That means a lot. And hi to Ron and Eddie and everybody else who's jumped in here. Sorry if I'm a little bit rambling at the moment. I'm just trying to get what I have on my mind spit out there, if you know what I mean. So TK said, did you see the interview on open source when questioning DaVinci? No, I have not seen that video yet. I definitely feel like people have kind of forgotten what open source was supposed to be about. And we're kind of going back to those days of where everybody's pretty much just trying to use it like a marketing term. Like in the food industry, until the FDA said, okay, you can't really call something a superfood without proving it. Every company is like, oh my gosh, this food product's got superfood. And then everybody goes psycho over it. And it's just like, it's a marketing term. It doesn't mean squat. You know, yeah, certain foods might be technically more healthy for you than others, but, you know, that sort of thing, you know. So it's, I think it's sadly just become a marketing term instead of actually being something special. And I think it's kind of just become also a victim of its own success. You can't expect something that was going to, when I say be sustainable in the long run, obviously you're going to have people who are going to benefit from it. But at the end of the day, you kind of hit that point where you're finally like, okay, everything's progressed enough. Now everybody's going to kind of go back in their happy little corner, work on their own thing, and we might come back again and work on it as a group. You know, I think we've kind of hit the peak, and I think we're going to kind of go back to everybody's going back to their little village with all the knowledge that they have, and then when they have a giant problem, they're all going to come back again and work as a group. I think that's kind of what we're going to see with open source. Is it's going to kind of like go back to being more proprietary, then maybe come back out, go back in. It's anybody's guess. That's just kind of the way that I've seen it, and I'm kind of thinking that's how it's going to go. So that's just my thing. So R1 Tool said DC servo motors and coders are all nice, but I think the future is desktop CNC machining, and 3D printing will just be another tool head in the arsenal. I half agree with you there, and I half don't. And I'm going to just say this because before I got into 3D printing, and before I even got into thanks, King Raina, for popping in, and hope you don't get snowed in too bad for Christmas. The thing I was going to say is before I even got into machining, I was big into design. So I started out in design, then I got into machining, then I got into 3D printing, and then got into welding, and I'm where I'm at now. So pretty much my take on home CNC machines is they're cool, but they're extremely dangerous. And I'm just speaking from personal experience here. They're definitely something that you need to treat with the utmost in respect. Everybody goes, ooh, laser cutter, lasers are dangerous. They burn your eyeballs. Totally true. But with the CNC machine, people keep forgetting that you have a razor sharp tool moving at high rates of speed generally through metal. The amount of force it takes to do that is extreme. And if things break or things come loose or something like that, you know, if a little plastic part goes, you know, it's not the end of the world, but it's still, to some extent, poses a safety hazard. And also they're just really, really, really messy. And certain metal shavings, especially brass and stuff, oh, those things are evil. They're like little micro razor blades. So when I say that CNC machines are dangerous, I'm speaking of that in terms of they're dangerous in ways that people don't realize. The metal shavings are really sharp. The tools are really sharp. And I'm not saying that they don't have their place. I just feel like if people really want to use them effectively, they take a lot more knowledge than a 3D printer or even a laser cutter does, especially if you want to start cutting materials like stainless steel, titanium, even steel or aluminum, or really anything in general. It takes a fair bit of knowledge to know how to listen to the machine, tune it properly for the cut, things like that. It's something that's an acquired skill. I mean, when I say I've seen people at the adult school that I used to work at and went to as a student have a $50,000 Haas VF1 that they had a half-inch end mill about half an inch deep into wood, spinning at about 7,000 RPM, feeding at about 3 to 5 inches a minute. And literally the wood is starting to smoke. We jokingly called it the $50,000 fire starter. There's literally wood smoke starting to come out of the machine. The sawdust is turning black, and it's like, nope, not good. So we'd have to like run on over there, try and snuff the smoke out before it set the smoke alarm off and called the fire department for nothing. You know, I'm being a little bit, you know, of like a worst case scenario here, but when you're cutting materials like stainless steel or titanium, if you cut them wrong, they will harden very quickly. And then it just becomes a giant disaster from there. So I see CNC machines becoming more popular, and there's definitely awesome ones on the market like the Carbide 3D Nomad. I think is extremely nice, but even then, you know, you definitely need to know what you're doing with it to make it effective. And there are profiles available for tools, and you can automate things a lot, which is helpful. But at the same time, if you really want to like fine tune things, that can be a little bit tricky. So we'll put it that way. So you definitely run into that problem of where you can make it closed loop, where it's just you plug in the tool information, you can adjust a thing, and you better pray it works. Or are you allowed to go in there and tweak things under the acknowledgement that you're liable for anything that goes wrong? You know, that sort of thing. So Ron Floyd said after almost 60 years of machining with 40 in CNC, he still has all his appendages, but he has lots of scars to prove it. Yeah. I've got a couple of scars myself from incidents. So definitely, you know, it's not a child's play toy. That's definitely for sure. You know, Natrabeck said, with CNC stuff, you can't see it taking off as large and accessible as FDM printers or laser cutters. They all catch on fire. Yeah. You know, I don't want to sound like I'm being a pessimist here, but I really don't think that, to be perfectly honest, I'm not saying this to diss anybody, and I'm not just saying this because I want to have the monopoly on machining stuff, but to be perfectly honest, if people are struggling to understand the concept of changing a nozzle on a 3D printer, or oiling the components, or clearing a clog, which really in the grand scheme of things is really, really simple, you know, on a 3D printer generally. If people are struggling to understand that, how much confidence do we really have in them to jump on a CNC machine and understand holding parts down and order of operations and things like that? I don't see the general population catching on with that. I see people who understand it getting it, which is totally cool. But at the same time, I just don't see the general population racing out there and picking one up and fully grasping it. So I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but I'm just saying that people's expectations versus the reality, we're still kind of seeing that problem with hobby 3D printers. So I hate to sound like a pessimist there, but oh well. Are there people out there who get it? Totally. General population? I don't think so. There's just way too much stuff that you need to know how to do to make it effective. But that being said, there are some people like Chuck Hellebuck who just released a video of him using his X-Carve to make a really nice sign that his wife ended up painting and staining. And that's a really good example of a CNC machine being used in the proper method to do something awesome. But then again, that was very simple. He was just cutting into a board. So if you want to do more complex stuff, it depends. It's like, I don't see people making up stuff like this, which is a brass locomotive shell. The doors are separate pieces that were soldered in, and then each side panel on the roof is its own piece that was CNC milled out of brass, and then the grill is 3D printed. I personally don't see people doing more complex stuff like that. Or if you guys watched the video that I just released of, well, here, I'll use this for the example, but I also don't see people making stuff like this where they have to cut it out of a piece of sheet material as easily, kind of like that brass tag that I did for my friend for her Christmas project. That was a very fun one. It's definitely cool, but I definitely don't, even something like that still took some skill to know that I had to do the engraving first, then cut the outside. And when I cut the outside, I left a little about 3 to 5 thousandths of material at the bottom. So even though like 99% of the thickness of the material was gone, the tape that was holding it down still had the residual holding force of all the tape on the outside holding the plate down, as well as that piece. So when the ML came along to do the final finishing contour, it was A, barely taking off any material, and B, it had, almost no load on the tool. So if for whatever reason the taping on that part was not perfect, it wasn't going to risk going and flying off. So that's definitely a good example of knowing how to do things in the proper order pays off. But, like Ron just said, CNC isn't for everyone. So much is involved. So yeah, definitely. I'm not saying that there might not be more hobby CNC machines on the market, which would be cool, but I definitely don't see it being as popular, or at least as, when I say user-friendly as a CNC machine or even a laser cutter. Even then, I honestly feel kind of like laser cutters, while they're really cool, they require so much setup, maintenance. You got to keep all the mirrors clean. You got to have a very good ventilation setup. Things like that. You got to be near the thing, so God forbid something catches on fire. I think, honestly, 3D printers are going to be kind of like the common machines, and we're going to see maybe a little more accessibility with laser cutters and CNC machines, but it's not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to cruise down to the local hobby store and I'm going to buy myself a CNC machine and a laser cutter and 3D printer combo, and $3 grand later I'm out the door. I don't see that happening. I definitely, though, see CNC machines being more something that are maybe more kind of like at your local makerspace, and you either take classes on how to use it or you just gladly pay somebody to make you the parts. That's kind of what I see it as. So that said, in 2018, I definitely want to do more machining projects because I've kind of figured out now how to film on the machine. And I do think they are popular with people, because if anything, it just shows them why things cost what they do, the effort that goes into it. I'm hoping to maybe go back to my friend's machine shop out in Modesto and maybe sit down with him for a little bit and have him talk about what it's like to do do CNC machining for a profession even. You know, that's his source of income. That's what he does, you know, does some incredible work. If you look him up on Instagram, it's at, let me double check it really fast, but he does incredible work on things. So it's definitely something that I want to touch on more in future episodes, but at the same time, it's something that needs to also be taken with a big dose of reality going, yeah, that's cool, but very specialized. So if you guys want to see some really interesting machining stuff, I'll put my friend's Instagram username down below, who has the machine shop Modesto, who does a lot of work. When you look at the stuff that he does, you'll go, okay, this guy definitely knows what he's doing. So TK said he wants to get back into stone carving again, which you can get a machine to do that, but he still prefers hands-on. Yeah, there's definitely something for hands-on. The thing that I like to do is machine the part out, but then assemble it by hand. That's kind of like what I find is a good in-between, kind of like the locomotive here. I did the design work, the CNC machine cut the parts out, then I soldered them all together and glued where necessary. And then I got this, a cool looking locomotive model. So I kind of see it as, you know, sure, I didn't sit there and I didn't cut out every little part, the little hand saw and a file. But at the same time, I got my enjoyment out of designing it, cutting the parts, assembling it, putting it together, and then bringing the final product to a trade show and having people go, wow, that looks really nice. Where'd you get that? And you can tell them, I built that. And they stare at you like, wait, you built that? And you're like, yeah, it's actually a brass cab. And they all go, whoa. You know, there's that, there's kind of that whole, yes, I didn't totally hand build it, but I used the technology and the skills that I have to augment what my idea was and actually make something better than if I did it all by hand. So, you know, that's kind of the way that I see it. So Ron said his final job was programming and setting up 13-axis Swiss turns. Search YouTube for a Citizen M12 incredible machines. Actually, my very, very, very first, only survived there about 5 days machining job because I couldn't stand all the oil and the smoke that was being blown into the air. I was working for a small company that did Swiss turning. And those machines, even if you don't understand a thing about machining, oh boy, those things are just absolutely insane to watch. How they'll take a piece of bar stock and you'll end up with like a titanium implant bone screw or watchmaking parts, like either really big or really tiny or just really complex stuff. And you're like, you mean that whole machine just cranked that out? What? It's crazy. So Keith said he has a Tormach PCNC 440 coming. Oh, nice. I actually looked into getting a Tormach a while ago, but I'm actually kind of happy I went the DIY CNC route, merely just because I can fit the DIY CNC in my car if I take it apart. Don't think I could do that with the Tormach. I'd probably need a couple of strong people, an engine hoist, and a small truck, which I don't own. But those machines are pretty cool. In the future, I am going to do a video where I compare hobby machines like that to professional ones to kind of, you know, show people what the difference is. Because the interesting thing is, if you do look around, you can find used CNC machines for a couple grand more than a nice hobby CNC machine. And there's pros and cons to both, but it's definitely, you know, I know some people who started out with the hobby CNC machines and didn't get what they wanted, and then bought a professional one and they're like, oh, snap, and really could kickstart their business because they finally had the features, the ability to do stuff the hobby one couldn't. So, you know, it goes from there. So Nitrobeck says he dislikes it when people think 3D printing is printing on an inkjet printer. You know what I also dislike? When people think CNC machines can make something in 15 seconds. You know, as far as things have come, you know, they've still got a ways to go with people's knowledge about stuff. But the main problem I run into is people still think things happen very quickly, and I'm like, oh, you mean like this little thing? Yeah, it's about 5 or 6 minutes worth of machining right there, and they just stare at you like, that little thing took 5 or 6 minutes to machine? You're like, yeah, it took 5 or 6 minutes to machine, probably about an hour's worth of work to make it all nice and shiny. Yeah, it takes a while, and they all just stare at you blankly like, I thought it was faster than that. I'm like, no, stuff takes a while. You know, you got to put the material down, you got to cut it, you got to clean it off. And then they all stare at you like, oh, really? And then you're like, that's why stuff costs what it does. There's a lot more work that goes into it than people think, you know, but that's the way it is. So Ron said he was making dental implants too, completely finished when they came off the machine. Yeah, those are crazy. Mind you, they still had to go through cleaning and anodizing and things like that, but the actual physical part was done. At one point in my life, I had a titanium plate and 6 screws in my leg. And then after another operation, I had a rod and 2 pins through my leg to fix a growth issue. And when they finally pulled that out, I'm looking at it going, that's some nice machining right there. Yeah. Like staring at the screws going, I know how they built that. And staring at the plate going, yeah, I know how to build that too. You know, it's kind of funny when you know how to do things like that and you stare at things in your everyday life and you're like, yeah, I think I know how they did that. Yeah, I think I know how they did that. You know, it's definitely cool, if you know what I mean. So but yeah, people's knowledge about things or lack thereof is super frustrating sometimes. Or when they think they know everything and you try and explain it to them and they're like, and they just don't get it. And you're like, I give up. I can't. So, you know, that's that in a nutshell. Keith said CNC Cookbook is a great read. Oh, yes. I have to thank CNC Cookbook for all the articles and the recipe for when I did the epoxy granite job on my CNC machine. And since I haven't had a ton of time to play around with the machine, I haven't come out with a follow-up video to that. But that's going to be definitely high on my 2018 to-do list, is come out with a video on that discussing if it really made a difference or not. And spoiler alert, I think it helped. But yeah, if anybody is interested in even just basic machining stuff, cnccookbook.com is definitely the place to go to. There are tons of really well-written articles, lots of informative photos and things like that. It's definitely worth just scrolling through if you want to get an idea of stuff. It's well written and it's a good read. Another one is I think it's called Modern Machine Shop. I'm not sure if it's free to read online. That one's geared more towards the professional sector, but there's still a lot that you can learn about it, especially if you want to see how the pros do it. And CNC Cookbook's more geared towards the hobby sector, although there is some professional stuff in there. They're, you know, they're amazing resources. And I'm probably going to do a video in the future discussing good resources for learning about CNC machining, even if you have absolutely zero interest in actually purchasing something, just, you know, trying to get an idea of what's involved in it or things like that. It's definitely worth at least exploring, just to go, okay, now it makes a little more sense, especially if you want to try and at least understand why things are the way they are, that sort of thing, you know. So yeah. Well, you guys want me to call the stream here or keep going a little bit more? You guys decide down in the chat below, because you guys have been awesome feeding me all this stuff. And thanks again to everybody who has come in here and chit-chatted with me. It's definitely a weird feeling doing a solo stream. You guys have been absolutely awesome, and I can't thank you enough. And I need to talk to Jimmy, but I am not sure if we're going to be holding a Tuesday night stream of the Calvin and Jimmy show or not, or if we're going to hold off on doing that until we get to Vegas with Jeff from Print 3D. So that's something we need to figure out, but I will tweet that out to you guys as soon as I know. But yeah, you guys let me know if you want me to keep going or not. So I'm going to pause for a second here for chat to catch up. And check to make sure my Twitter hasn't blown up in the meantime. Oh, TK, you're bad. You're bad. Have a good night, Keith. He just said, well, I have nothing to do for the next 24 hours. So, nah, he's just joking. All right. Well, you know what? I'm probably going to call the stream here in just a couple of minutes. My laptop's running off battery as well, and it's dropped down a little bit lower. So should probably, I'll call the stream here at 7:45 or thereabouts. So R1 Tool asked, what 3D printers do I own? Well, you guys can probably see it. I have the Ultimaker 2, which is the very first one that I bought. Then I have the formerly tested.com MakerBot Thingomatic right there. And if you look on my channel, I have some videos showing that in action. The cool thing about the Thingomatic is it is stock, except for the fact that it has an E3D hot end on it, a custom hot end / extruder that I made up, and has a custom BuildTak flex plate bed that BuildTak was gracious enough to make me. So that's my two 3D printers for you. It's hard to say which one actually gets more work, as I actually use the Thingomatic for non-precision print jobs like, oh, where is it at? Where'd it go? Oh, whatever. I was making up a custom little battery holder for a friend. I'm like, I'll throw it on the Thingomatic. All the Maker coins that I gave out at Maker Faire were all done on the Thingomatic. So it's nice to have for lower precision jobs where it's kind of like, I don't want to tie up the Ultimaker in case I need it. I can just throw it on the Thingomatic and go, oh, hey, print, that sort of thing. So, that's kind of what I use. Thanks, Nitro. Thanks for jumping on, and it was good having you here. And TK said, have a great Christmas, everyone. Yeah, definitely. Christmas will officially start here in about 4 hours and 24 minutes. Hey, what's up, Stuff with Kirby? And thanks, Ron. Yeah, Nitro, when it came to making my Maker coin, in short, I pretty much said I like gears. And my channel title is Make It With Calvin. And where to put it? Crap. I had to move everything from the stream. Oh, where to put the big coin? Dang it. Where'd it go? One sec, guys. Sorry. Oh, boy. Where'd it go? Well, somewhere around here. Can't I find it? Every time I want the thing, I can't find it. But in short, what I did is took a gear shape that I made up, stuck my logo on it, and went from there. So really, my attitude is go for something that's either easy to make in a sticker form, or if you're going to 3D print it. That would be my advice. Definitely go simple. So I feel like simple Maker coins almost say more than a fancy one. Hey, that's just me. So that'd be my advice on it. But other than that, I'm no graphic designer. So, that's all the advice I can offer. I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Fail. That's my Maker coin blown up to about 8 inches around. But you can see it's a rough gear shape. And I just decided to recess the lettering a little bit, and that's the general gist of it, if that makes sense. So yeah. Have a good Christmas Eve, Ron, and geez, TK, it's 3:30 over there. Dude, you win the award for staying up real early to watch the show. Normally, when I do the show with Jimmy, we do it around 10:30 or 11. So, we can hit more of the East Coast, more of the European audience, which is more of what he is. I tend to be a little more North American, but it's hard to find a time that works for everybody. So I'm like, I'll just start streaming around 6, and if people come on, that's cool. Not thinking too much of it. Now I've been going for almost an hour and 45 minutes, and it's like, what? So that's cool. Yeah, Kirby, theoretically, the gears would line up. I'm pretty sure they'd probably have some slop in them, but it probably would work. You know, it's when I designed it, I was more or less just going for what visually looked good, but I could always tell people, yeah, it's modeled off a gear shape, sort of, so that's why I did that. So that's kind of the way that I saw it. But the other thing was I wanted something that was easy to machine, which is what I've done with the keychains, is taking that shape and, you know, that sort of thing. Thanks, Rick, for the Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Same to you, and good luck with that crazy project you're working on with your son. That thing is awesome. Well, my laptop's dying. I'm running out of juice, so I think I'm going to call the stream here, guys. Huge, huge, huge thank you again to Joe, 3D Maker Noob, for giving me the shout out earlier today. That was completely unexpected and super awesome of him to do that. And thanks to everybody who's not only jumped on this stream, but also subscribed. I hope you guys enjoy what I've got. It's definitely been a awesome year. And tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time, I have a kind of like a highlights reel dropping. So you guys definitely will probably enjoy that. And then on Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, I have, quote, the lost episode of Make It with Calvin, which is a whole set of footage that my dad just randomly was like, yeah, let's film this, and totally forgot that I had. And then I went, oh, shoot, that never got uploaded. So I decided, you know what? It'd actually be hilarious to upload kind of like the, quote, lost episode that was completely unplanned. So I hopefully will have you guys enjoying that. And then I've got the trip on the 30th and the 31st with Jimmy and Jimmy Shaw's Tidbits, going over to Print 3D, Jeff's place out in Vegas. So that's going to be fun. I'm going to try and shoot like at the end of the night, internet permitting in time as well, kind of like a little highlights reel of both days that I might upload to the main channel or I might upload to the extras channel. Once I figure that out, I will tweet that out to you guys on both my accounts, and you can all figure it out from there. But yeah, that's kind of the plan. And then come 2018, I'm going to dive right back into video making and try and do the best that I can with maybe doing 2 videos a week. It's sometimes a little bit difficult, so that's sometimes why I'll just do like a time-lapse video or something easy like that during the week. But I figure, you know what? People seem to enjoy those, and it kind of gives a flavor of projects going on and things like that. So that's that. As always, thank you guys for coming on here. Thanks to everybody who threw a little bit of money with Super Chat. That was awesome and much appreciated. Also, feel free to check out the links down below to the channels that I've linked to. As just kind of like a little pay it forward, just a couple of YouTube accounts that I thought were cool that might, you know, no pressure to subscribe to them, but at least check them out. And I figured, you know, something might float somebody's boat. So, you know, that whole thing. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I will see you here whenever we do the next live stream with Jimmy. And yeah, have a very Merry Christmas. Please stay safe, everybody. Happy New Year. And I will see you guys hopefully in 2018. See you guys later.